So in recent days, there have been reports of journalists and political opponents in Zimbabwe being tortured. The journalists have had to go into hiding for fear of being arrested over their critical reporting. Protest marches are being held around the world. Protest marches, rather, are being held around the world in solidarity with the people of Zimbabwe. Let's get you the latest in terms of what is happening in the country. I'm joined by journalist Zenzele Ndebele. He's in Bulawayo for us. If you can give us the latest on the situation at this hour, Zenzele, what is the temperature in the country?
Well, the people are still recovering from the hectic weekend of the 31st. There were quite tense moments where, there was a lot of army and police presence. A number of activists were abducted, beaten up. Some journalists had to go into hiding because of the state was looking for them. Now things are getting to relax a bit, but people don't know what the future holds, especially after the speech by the president yesterday, where he called some people dark forces, oppositional terrorists, and said that his government was going to flush out, opposition members and activists. So there is still that tense feeling that probably the West is yet to come.
Let's expand on that. The president's address yesterday, noting that a small minority in his administration is stalling his attempts at reform in the country, saying my administration, quote, has faced many hurdles and attacks. Meaning what exactly?
Well, that's one thing that many people have been asking themselves, because when he took over, remember, Robert Mugabe kept on talking about the sanctions were pulling down, the West was not helping the situation. And Mnangagwa came and said, no, we don't care whether there are sanctions or not. We are going to re-engage the countries and, we cannot work in isolation. And he's slowly going back to those excuses that there are external forces that are working against him. And so there's been talk that internally there are some people who want him out, but that has not been clear how they are going to do that. So we have a problem when people who have failed to deliver now start blaming the opposition, they start blaming other people, because he blamed everyone except himself.
And that's just it, right? So what responsibility is being taken here, or at least in the absence of taking responsibility? What is the word in terms of saying, well, this is being condemned and it will not happen under my watch, and this is what we're going to do to better the situation? Anything like that?
What is said is that at the end of the speech, people were asking themselves, so what's the way forward? What is he going to do about this? Because he came in and said, you are doing this, you are doing this, you are doing this, you are wrong. And then people said, so what next? We are in the middle of a COVID pandemic where the cases are rising every day. People are dying. Our health system is not working. And people expected him to show leadership, to say, guys, it's 2 years since I took over. I expected things to have worked this way, but it's not working, or we are getting there. And these are the steps that we're going to take. None of that. He comes with threats. He comes with, in the fighting mood, saying that I'm going to flush out those people the minority who are working against it. What about the majority that are suffering? What is he going to do? So that was the speech that shows you that he has no plan whatsoever. The only plan that he has is to crush anyone who speaks against his policies or his government. So the man has no plan, and he confirmed it yesterday.
Curious to find out what everyday Zimbabweans on the ground are saying. I mean, we're seeing the hashtag Zimbabwean Lives Matter gaining traction on social media, so that social media activism really bringing that fire. But on the ground, what are people feeling and saying?
Well, people are tired, people are angry. Zimbabwe has been in a crisis for the last 20 years or so. So someone who was born in 2000 at the height of the farm invasions, they are now an adult, and Zimbabwe is in crisis. So the majority of the people are really not happy with what is going on. They're not happy that things are moving. And they're asking themselves, are we a cursed nation? What can be done to actually also be a story to tell, to say, we had problems and we moved on. We can't be a laughing stock forever. So there is really no excitement amongst the Zimbabweans. They are just frustrated. And, every young Zimbabwean that you meet, they are talking about getting out of the country and finding a place to go where they can have a better life.
Do they feel abandoned, more so by the regional response? We heard something yesterday eventually from the African Union. We're still yet to hear from the chair. We still have to hear from countries in the SADC region in terms of what it is that can be done to sort of bring about an intervention in Zimbabwe.
Well, Zimbabweans are excited that the likes of, Musi Maiman and EFF, are really, Julius Malema, are really, taking it and showing solidarity with the Zimbabweans and saying something has to be done. But they are quite disappointed with the South African government and SADC in particular. But so, for those who in the know-how, that South Africa and SADC has always maintained this quiet diplomacy over the years. Even at the height of the political crisis in 2008, they were talking about quiet diplomacy, which is not working. So people expect South Africa as a neighbor to speak loudly against what is going on, the human rights abuse, the arresting of journalists, and the activists. Because at the end of the day, it is the neighbors who are going to also feel the pain. When there is a crisis in Zimbabwe, Zimbabweans are going to migrate, to run away, to flee to South Africa, to Botswana. And these are the countries that are going to have their own infrastructure, coming under pressure health-wise and all these kind of things. So they need to speak loudly and clearly so that there is stability in Zimbabwe, because no neighbor wants to have a neighbor who's always fighting and shouting and having their kids running to their house for safety. So I think SADC has been a big letdown to the people of Zimbabwe, and Zimbabweans have gotten used to the issue that SADC is not going to say much.
On the everyday issues, there's always been a shortage of basic supplies. This has been strained by the COVID-19 pandemic, but what are we seeing there?
In terms of commodities, most of the commodities that the people need every day, they're there. The problem is the pricing. The majority of the Zimbabweans who are civil servants, who are just buying and selling, cannot afford the products of goods, because the price of goods, because prices are going up every day. There is high inflation. Worse still, when the majority of the people are not working because of the COVID pandemic. So you find that the lives have become, life has become so expensive for the majority of Zimbabweans who cannot afford to buy basic commodities. And that is the biggest challenge that many people are facing. And also Zimbabweans have also survived by mostly trading in the neighboring countries, Namibia, South Africa, Botswana, Zambia. And currently they are not able to do that because borders are closed. So you just have to survive within your means.
Just in closing up the conversation, Zenzele, would you say that the judiciary in Zimbabwe is non-existent?
Well, there are times when the judiciary has disappointed, so to speak, but there are times when they've really come up and saved the day. Last Friday there was a young man who disappeared or was kidnapped by state agents, and his lawyer actually did an urgent application. The High Court instructed that he be brought back in 72 hours. Yesterday, the young man appeared in court after having been, released from wherever he was. So that was a brilliant work from the judiciary. So there are times when people have felt let down, but there are times also when they really come and saved the day. And in this case of Tawanda, who had been kidnapped by the state agents, they were given 72 hours to bring him, and they did bring him back.
With a number of Zimbabwean professionals scattered throughout parts of the world, the question becomes who is responsible for rebuilding the country?
Yeah, that is the big question. But also, before we even talk about rebuilding Zimbabwe, we need to talk that we need to put the basic infrastructure in place. And there's nothing wrong with the Zimbabwean people. There's nothing wrong with the Zimbabwean weather. There's nothing wrong with the Zimbabwean soil. But what is terribly wrong in Zimbabwe is the political leadership. We have no leadership. We have heartless people who just don't care about everyone. Unless we solve the political crisis in Zimbabwe, there's nothing that we are going to do. There is no business that we want to invest. There's no one who wants to come back and invest. So we have a political crisis in Zimbabwe. We have a crisis of leadership. And the question is, how do we solve that?
Thank you very much for sharing with us this afternoon. Journalist Zenzele Ndebele out in Bulawayo for us.